Hello, Sailor people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey, and this month we're going to do some ink training. So here I have my assortment of pens and brushes and some whiteout, some nibs, and all the tools. Also got some paper, I got some rough, and I got some smooth Strathmore. Nice, bright, white, and crisp. And last week we used the new tools to just test it out, to give it a run through to see what does it look like on paper. Can I get thin lines, thick lines? And so I do this little test to work through my equipment, especially the new stuff. Got to test out the new stuff. And that's what we did. So like I said, for the month we'll be doing some inks. And so I'm gonna do these characters differently. So I'm thinking some pen nibs for some of them and some brush work for others, just to get back into the flow and get a feel of what I'm doing. So here I have these nib holders, and the nib holders with some black, speedball black Indian ink that I've had this for a while. I mix it up, shake it up to get it mixed fairly well so this, doesn't all settle. I also have this holder, which is sturdy board that I cut and then I put the ink through so that it doesn't spill, which is a nightmare of mine for any inker, I guess. So I have this cloth that I use to clean and the nibs. There's this Tachikawa Crow Quill and a G pen, which is on the left. And I put the nibs, you insert it into the holder, but you don't touch the tip. I try not to get my fingerprints and hand oils on this nice clean nib. So I insert it into the holder using my cleaning cloth, which is in rough shape, but it used to be white, but now it's all inked up in a mess. But this is what I use to clean my nibs after every session, well, even during sessions. But yeah, I haven't inked in a while, so I need to get some reps in, get myself back on track. Now I have all these assortment of characters, and I'm gonna do, I think, each one with a different either nib or a different brush, just to try out some tools while also working on characters. So I clamp it down to Strathmore paper with these little clamps that I just bought from the Staples, and it keeps the paper from moving all around as I ink. And I have my light table, turn it down just a little bit so I can see and you can see it. And now let's get some inking in. Now for inking, don't go all the way down. I don't try to touch the bottom. I just try to get it to where it's about the midsection of the nib. There's a little hole in it, like the middle, and that's where I don't try to go past that. Now let's get started. Now it's been a while since I've inked anything, so my hand's gonna be shaky, and I'm gonna be a lot rusty. But usually with a quill you get a bit more control. And the very basics is, it'll make a line, and with more pressure, the lines will get thicker. So usually the top lines, and I go from upper left to lower right. And the lines on top I do thinner, like so. But lines that are beneath, I try to put more pressure on to get just some slight thickness. So it's variations of, light pressure and more pressure for thicker, more ink on the paper. And every artist is different. Some people like quills or nibs. It depends on your style, what you're going for. I'm not exactly very versed in inking. I do it occasionally, but not as much as I'd like to. I like to get really good at inking. So I always, in the beginning, I'm always I go the slowest, and I'm more careful in the beginning before I really get into the flow. Because the beginning is usually the most nerve-wracking, and also I usually start with the head, but this is gonna be fun. And I'm not exactly sure about the format of this or how often I want to do it. I want to do at least one a week, but yeah, all of these characters done slightly differently to see what tools I like, what tools I, just think are okay, or just find out where my strengths are. I guess that's the biggest thing I want to find. I'll be doing different subject matter. Like I still want to do the drawing the Marvel way chapter headers, chapter images, and you'll see what I mean, like in some of the other videos. But this is just me testing out some equipment that I got, trying to warm up, get loose for the further month. Because usually as the month goes on, I should be better. And this cloth is what I use to clean in intervals whenever I feel it's getting a little bit cakey on the nib, and try to clean it off. But yeah, this is going to be pretty chill, pretty relaxed. If I have something I want to note, I shall do so, but it'll be sometimes just some time-lapsed ink drawings, but we're gonna have a good time as we sharpen our skills. So you'll note that the bottom of her chin, I tried to make the lines thicker than some of the top lines, like the top of her head, top of her hair. And I always do the outside lines first. So it's just what I call clean inks. It's just the outline of the character, no color, no ink fills. So that way I scan it in, and if I want to do something like in Illustrator to sharpen up a color, say if I want to, it'll be promotional material or something else like that. I like to always keep some clean inks. And then after I scan them, then I can go in the next day and then do solid black ink fills and all of that, the detailing and whatnot. And sometimes I do details with like a nib like so, but a lot of times I use pens, like Microns, Copics, for those details. But everybody's different, so it all depends. And the character that I'm doing is Beautiful Beast Kiss, who I'm working on another short comic, and I've been testing out characters for the next chapter, and I got them just about how I want them, and that's why I'm using these characters to ink to clean it up a little bit. Yes, the bottom of the dress, more pressure, so I get darker lines. And I'm not exactly sure what I like more, but I guess that's why we're doing this. One day I'd like to be really good at inking with a brush, like a real sable brush, but I thought it's best to practice and learn first so that I'm not just going through brushes, like not knowing what I'm doing. So this is always good practice. And there's something, I guess, soothing about inking. It's not the most thought intense. I mean, there's thought going into it, but to me, it seems more soothing than the drawing portion. The drawing, I always get more, I wouldn't call it antsy or more focused, but it's, I don't know, it's a different feel when I'm drawing than when I'm inking. Inking, I feel a bit more, I guess, focused in a different way, I guess is the best way. Where I'm not focused, I don't know, just maybe focused in a different way. I guess that's just the best way I can describe it. But this is, the inking part is where I feel like the character is the character. Right? Once you put down these lines, I feel like the character is real. In a sketch phase, it's like I can change things. I can erase things and change it back and go back and forth with myself. But when I ink, I feel like the character is now the character. And that was done with this Crow Quill Tachikawa Nib with one of my old holders. So now it's time for the final touches. And for the details, I usually do pens, an ink wash, and final inks, the black, jet black inks. So I usually do the pens because in detailing, I do the small little refinements because I don't trust myself sometimes using a brush just to really get in there and get those fine details. So like the toes, toenails, a lot of eye detail because that's where usually the viewer will look, and any other small bits and bobs that I can think of just to help round out the character. So the eyes are one of the most important things for a character, but of course I forgot the stripes to put those on. So that was the pen. And now let's do some ink washes. Now this step, sometimes I don't do, and I just go to full jet black inks. But sometimes if an image is complicated, or I want the darks to be in certain areas and situations, I lay down some very washed down inks and put that down for the shadows and other darker areas, just to get an idea about where I'll place my darker blacks. And sometimes I just do straight ink washes. But it all depends on what the art calls for. Now it's time for some super black. And this is the final, well, not the final part, but this is where I think it really comes into focus. Putting the darks in. I don't know, it feels like it's more complete, more eye-catching and poppy, or to contrast with the line work, some value, and yeah, just bring it all together. Now this image isn't super detailed, super defined. I'm just using this to practice, get better, and it's not super involved, which is pretty good. I like to get into it slowly, work up the muscle, so that when I come to some really detailed work, I won't freak out. So that's what this is for. And last is her armlet, her leg bracelet. And now I think it's just about done. But I think we'll do the eyes in pen just to put the blacks in there. Again, don't trust myself with a brush to do this fine detail work. So it usually always comes down to the pen with the finalization of the eye details. Eyelashes, pupil, and all of that. And of course, there's always these little errant lines that you always forget. And that's why I like to look at some images the day after to, do checks to see if, okay, did I forget something? Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, you forget smaller details, or I was going to do such and such, but I forgot. You need touch-ups. So this is the perfect time to do those touch-ups. And now I have a white jelly roll pen, and I mark in the eye details or the highlights. But I also can go in and define some structure in the deep blacks. I can also use an X-Acto knife sometimes to scrape off some of the black or contour some things. And that is details. Some things you miss. Final check. Oh. Yeah, and it gets rid of small mistakes. And that is Beautiful Beast Kiss. All inked. Nicely done, nicely done. And so that was our first ink test with a Crow Quill Nib, some pens, some whiteout, and some deep blacks. Thank you for joining me. I've been Trey. You can find my work at treyhodges.com, and I'll see you in the next episode. Later.